Greetings and welcome to Wisdom Speaks, to you for clarity. I am your host. I am Halia Hadassah Moshe, and I am the producer of Wisdom Speaks. Some of you might recognize me from maybe like at least 7 or 8 years ago, and I was here with a platform of I would say just giving praise and honor with the understanding and the acknowledgement of the divine spirit that at that present time I give glory and honor to from a biblical perspective. But a lot has changed even from the beginning where I was guided by the divine spirit. Everybody must go through a boot camp in order to be a vessel to truly say in the end that we all have been deceived, but we are not to stay deceived when we truly study to show ourselves approved. So today I'm going to relay a platform in reference to my journey since 1997 to 2018 while I was on what they call hemodialysis. You know, a soft, no, actually it goes, a hard head makes a soft behind. And being hard headed based on one's personal ignorance is one thing, but to come to find out that ignorance was actually intentionally instituted into what we call church and state institutions is another thing, especially when you find out it was intentionally done on purpose in order to suppress and oppress a people. So, in this present time, that the Divine Spirit had awakened me in 2012 after being on dialysis for 5 years. The Divine Spirit, what the state and the church was unable to do, was to bring forth truth to truly allow me to change my ways. It took a divine intervention. It took a divine spirit to come to me, not in the setting of an organized institution, especially from a mind of a people who has enslaved us, exploit us, demise us, mistreat us, and do all type of evil to us, even as it is this day. But, you know, ignorance is like a stumbling block, but when you come into true knowledge, it is now what I would consider a building blocks. Now, because in all actuality, when you learn better, you speak better, you do better, and in all actuality, you're able to share better. Okay, so previously, before I became in consciousness, I had some chain of events since I was 7 years old. I was introduced to parental abuse. That was my sister and my daddy, who happened to been a preacher. Come to find out, he was sexually abusing my sister and tried to do the same to me. But the divine spirit, you know, as knowing all of us before we even entered in to our mother's womb, the divine, as we all are first a thought, and then the divine spirit speaks us into existence, and then put a covering over us, our soul and our spirit, that we may function in a realm that she, and I say she, and I will explain why I say she, because you're looking at a reflection of the image of whom I was created from. And in order not to delay it, let me back up, because this is one of the revelations that the divine spirit revealed unto me from the beginning, when the spirit started revealing to me who my true nature and image was created from. Because if you notice in the Bible, there's a chapter 1 and a chapter 2 in reference to bringing forth the concept of creation of man, human, or the reflection thereof. And if you notice, when you're sitting in a church setting, they always go to chapter 2. Now, when you come into knowledge, you're first a babe. You're like a child. So the divine is going to start you off with some milk, but it's going to be contrary to what the self-appointed teachers and interpreters and translators of a language that wasn't originally theirs, how it's going to be explained. Also, the Divine Spirit showed me that the original language, which would be considered like oracles, divine language, pure that is truth. That means the truth, when it is consumed, the truth changes things, but yet the truth itself changes not. That means whoever's gifted in order to translate it and interpret it into another language, into another culture, would never lose its original thought. But when it's in the hands and the minds of people who have no intentions of acknowledging the divine spirit according to whom it was given to because of the hue of their skin and the ability to create a civilizations without barbaric behavior and hypocrisies, the divine spirit reveal us the right way of the laws of the universe and the laws of the land, and given us principles, laws and principles on how to interact with one another, allowing the peace upon the land and within the people to soar continuously. But then when you have a people with a darkened heart and a darkened past and a darkened way of thinking to explain a language that is so pure, it's going to be defiled. So I come to say to this that the divine spirit, when I asked why, I can notice that whenever they speak of quote God, what people call God, I personally have come to the knowledge that the divine could not be compared to anything that would be forward or backwards considered to be called a dog. Because when you actually look at the word God, backwards it spells dog. Now the divine, because of my purity of my heart and humbleness of not wanting to call the divine spirit the omnipotent, the omnipresent, the omnipotent, the omnipotent, the benevolent, the omniferous, and the omnicompetent, the self-existent one, the first and the last, the beginning without end, our true author and our finisher, the life giver, the life sustainer, the life reclaimer, our divine protector, our divine provider, our divine counselor, our divine comforter cannot be compressed to a word that was created after the time of creation. So the divine spirit allows me to say the glory of divinity, because whatsoever we do in life, when you come to the knowledge that we have an everlasting eternal parents, masculine and feminine, the masculine being the representation of the Father, and the divine feminine being the nature of the divine feminine. Now, even science itself would say that the universe is like a black womb, WOMB, that produces all into existence, giving birth. That is a feminine attribute. So when you understand that the feminine is the source of life that gives birth to, like the word she has he in it. Kind of like, has someone ever asked you which one come first, the chicken or the egg? Well, when you truly understand the nature of that, you would understand that the chicken has the egg within it already. So just like woman, she is born into the world with every child possible that she can ever have because she has an eggs within herself that reproduces herself. And then, like in the universe, the divine spirit is what one I would consider absolute. All things that could exist, can exist, and will exist, and have exist is already within the divine spirit. That's the reason why your Bibles would say, that the divine spirit, the glory of divinity, produces created light and darkness, good and evil. As a matter of fact, the first time I read that, I practically almost threw the Bible across the room when I saw where somebody would literally say that God, the glory of divinity, created evil. But that's another story for another day. But nevertheless, just so you understand that when I refer to the divine spirit as she, it's because the spirit opened up my eyes and had me to read chapter 1 of Genesis, the first chapter, and the 26th and the 27th verse. Now, I don't explain, I speak in English, I write in English, but the divine anointed my mind to be able to reason in the concept of the language of the Ancient of Days. My ancestors who actually had the ability to reason with truth in its original form. So the Spirit had me to look at it, and it says, God, which the Hebrew language from the Bible, because they said the Old Testament is from a Hebrew perspective and the New Testament is from a Greek perspective. Well, you already have the vision right there. Because, first of all, Greeks did not honor or glorify or accept the ways of the Hebrew. So, that too is another for another day to break that down. But it's a conflict of interest. So in the Hebrew, it will actually say the word Elohim. And Elohim is not singular, it's plural. And even if you don't understand that, then the divine spirit will reveal it to you that as you read, it says, God said, let us. When you hear the word us, that means you're including another deity other than yourself. So therefore, when the divine spirit says us, it's self-explanatory that there's another divinity or deity present. And if you didn't catch it there, it says, let us make man out of our image. Now, first of all, it said, let us make man. It didn't say, let us make men, like how a lot of preachers and teachers from a religious indoctrination or dogma would teach you to. It's a platform of suppression and oppression of the divine feminine nature of the creator, which would be the creatress. It's no different than the divine spirit basically telling man that when a man and a woman come together, they become as one. Well, the divine doesn't need to look for its mate. And the divine is complete and absolute within itself. But nevertheless, so the divine word would say, let us make man, meaning mankind or human, out of our image, made them male and female. That means I, as a female, am made out of the image of the feminine nature of the divine spirit, and men are made out of the masculine nature of the divine spirit. So, not just one individual is made out of the image of the divine, but we all, in our perspective of what we were born into the world as a contribution, not only to contribute to the repopulation of the world, but to be in our place and position for the divine spirit to use us in a divine way. Therefore, I just want to let you know know, me as a woman, I would call the divine spirit she because I represent she. And it would not make any sense for me to be in the presence of the omnipresence of the divine's house um, and not acknowledge her divine spirit. Mankind, human, has no problem calling the earth Mother Nature. His science says that the black universe is a black womb, so therefore you can't have two without the three, which is the Trinity, and we be the manifestation of the Word, the first the thought, then the Word manifested in the flesh, because therefore the source of life come forth from the woman, and the protection of that life comes from the masculine, and they both have a nature of protecting, providing, counseling, and comforting. But at the same time, the mother is the first protector, the first provider, the first counselor, and the first comforter. Because within her womb, she protects the baby. When the baby is born, doesn't have to be a fruit tree or a vine or anything present, but she can take the baby, the infant, and place it on her breast and nurture the baby from her own body. So she's the first provider. She's the first counselor because normally, if you notice, a mother is always constantly rubbing and speaking to her baby in the womb. And those infant, those extensions of her is able to communicate through the law of vibration and the law of rhythm. So even her voice is soothing and being like a counsel. And not to mention when the baby comes out, the mother is the one who's always constantly teaching and speaking and guiding and counseling the child. And of course, naturally, whenever there's an opportunity to be comforted, you find it within the divine spirit, as divine spirit, the nurturing of the mother. That's the reason why we always see grown men who play sports. They always give that shout out to mommy first. And the daughters. Sometimes some of us are like daddy's little girl, but at the same time, when it comes to counseling and nurturing, we find that within the divine feminine. So I'm going to leave that there and come back to it at another time of enlightenment when it's basically focused on the concept and the understanding and the insight of what it is that we actually read that has been given to us as a religion made from man's made own opinion and self-appointed way of thinking in order to suppress and oppress the divine image and the divine femininity of the woman and her calling as wisdom speaks. She's the wisdom keeper, the wisdom speaker, and she is the gatekeeper and in the way of the gates as well. Because remember, read chapter 8 of Proverbs, and then you will truly understand where the true beginning, not in the book of New Testament and not in the beginning of the Old Testament, is actually strategically placed in Proverbs, where the book of wisdom. So may your ears be anointed so you can hear and understand. May your eyes be anointed so you can truly see and perceive. And most importantly, may your heart be anointed from your own desires to truly know the truth so you can be receptive of the truth. And may you apply that you may multiply in fruit, in season, and out of season. But in this present time of eternity, it's very important that you have a understanding of your real sovereignty and the reality of things that has happened, is happening, and shall happen. Okay, so now that I have that platform set in its rightful place, let me give this opportunity to glorify our everlasting parent. Because in spite of the things that I had experienced in my life, the divine found me worthy to be called, chosen, and now sent for a divine purpose. Now, instead of trying to take 30 something years and explain it in an hour program, I'm going to just kind of like breeze through some things, and maybe we can elaborate on it at another time. But on February the 28th, 2012, I went to bed living as a person with characteristics and behaviors. I used to drink, I used to smoke, I used to snort, I used to shoot, I used to lie, I used to steal, I used to carry gun, I used to carry knife, I used to be a lesbian, I used to be abusive to old and young, two-footed and four-footed. I've been in the group homes, the treatment centers, the foster care, jail, from A to Z. Anything you can imagine is everything that I was. I was not anything that a righteous mind would want to take to home. You know, they said, be aware of a big butt and a smile. Well, I didn't have a big butt, but I definitely had a smile. And I definitely, unfortunately, knew how to use it in a way that I would perceive to be innocent, but my thoughts and my intentions was contrary to that. But on February, oh, actually, it was February the 27th, because I woke up on February the 28th not knowing how things were going to unfold any different than what the Divine Spirit was going to allow me to experience throughout the day. And I wasn't acknowledging the Spirit at the time anyway. So, but my intentions was to go out and party and do what I was normally accustomed to doing. After being on dialysis for 5 years, I, still was trying to live in the fast lane and do, what I wanted to do. And so I had made plans to go out and party and hopefully get in a dance contest because I was a very skilled dancer. I would love to more like perform instead of just dancing. I like to perform. Nevertheless, I was on my way out to go party, and then I noticed I was still standing at the top of the steps, and I was wondering why am I not moving from this spot. So, a long story short, I realized that I'm having thoughts and I need to go address them. And the next thing I know, the Divine Spirit showed up right where I was in the midst of all my uncleanliness, my filthiness, not my home, just my life. Because my home, I always kept immaculate. If it was nothing else that I wasn't going to do, is to make sure that my home stayed neat and tidy and clean. But the inside of me was not that way. So I was actually looking for somebody to call to ask to see what I needed to talk about this situation. And I went through four names and realized that I was alone. I have been so analytical and hard to deal with that I didn't realize for a whole year that I didn't even have any friends because I had treated them in a way that they didn't want to be a part of my extended family. But nevertheless, the Divine Spirit, I was trying to figure out who I was going to talk to. And then within my own lips, um, I didn't know it was the Spirit, but I knew it wasn't me. But it was like the Spirit said, call. I actually said the word God. Now, when that came out, my immediate response was HELL no. Simply because my experience at 7 years old with a preacher who was sexually abusing his daughter and then tried to do the same to me and was talking and preaching about God, but still yet having this type of behavior, I didn't want no part of a God that would allow these type of things to happen. So I immediately said HELL no, you know. And then out of my mouth says, well, God must be a woman. And I really was like, okay, I know I must be losing my mind because I never heard of anything of such. Because I always heard father and he, father and he, father and he. But nevertheless, I was still trying to figure out. I needed some counseling, so did, I really want to zoom in on these present blessings, and maybe over this season I can touch and dip and dab in a lot of my different experiences. But I want to show you that what we say, that we are not perfect. The divine spirit says, "Be ye perfect as I am perfect." Now, the divine spirit said that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And you really have to believe that. So, fearfully and wonderfully made is to be perfect in the purpose of what we're created for. Now, the to create a tree, if we looked at man to be the perfection of a living thing, then one would say that a tree is imperfected because it doesn't look like me. When we look at the animals for the kingdom, for what they're created for, they're perfect just the way they are. But we will look at ourselves and compare ourselves to another and say, that this person or that person is not perfect because they don't look like me. Well, the foolishness of the way of thinking that what you see as a reflection from your own image in the mirror is imperfect. Some of us might consider, because we have flaws within our outer physical appearance, that we're not perfect. But for the divine purpose of why the Spirit sent you into this realm the way you are is a divine perfection for the purpose of what she's called and chosen you to be. So in my case, in all my acquired, because she sent me into this earth, this world, this realm, perfect as an infant, with in my purity and in my innocence. But what we have become is the imperfection and the flaws of man-made laws in his teachings and everything that has been implemented within our homes and our church, because the two main institutions that has an influence in our lives is church and state. Church from a religious moral perspective, and from the state school and educations, and politics. Don't, yeah, because we definitely will be really looking deeply into money, religion, and politics, the trinity of colonization. Okay, so the divine spirit took in what I was for her own divine purpose of first bringing to my attention that a precious stone, when it is found, like whether it's a diamond, a ruby, a sapphire, an emerald of sort, when you find a precious stone, even mineral like gold, it's covered in filth, it's covered in dirt. So you don't know the true value of that precious stone until it goes up under a refining fire, until it goes up under the oracles or the words of truth, and it becomes like a refining fire, removing all the dirt and the filth, and then you can see the true value of that individual or that stone. So my behaviors from the past was my filth, but up underneath this filth was a precious stone, worthy to be put in a breastplate of righteousness, according to the divine spirit of what she's called and chosen me to do. Because she revealed to me, after I asked the divine spirit of wisdom and eternal and infinite intelligence, why or what is happening to me. And she revealed to me, well, she liked to close my eyes and take my hand and open up the book and place my finger on the answer, because she's actually speaking to the inner child. You know, a child always wants to please, and they're eager to learn and listen and just be up under that nurturing spirit that just allows them to continuously be fed from a divine spiritual connection for a divine purpose of a destiny and a purified legacy. So the divine spirit allowed me to see the answer after I asked, and she says, "Now you have received not the spirit of the world, but the spirit which is of the glory of divinity," which some from a religious perspective would say God. Um, to know the things that are freely given unto you, not in the words which man's wisdom teach it, but which the divine, holy, sacred spirit of wisdom, the divine mother, speaks it. To show you those things that are spiritual and those things that are of spirit. And she opened my eyes right away for me to truly see it and perceive it, hear it and understand it, and a heart that was able to receive it and apply it. And I was like, wow. So I was like, you know, I never read the Bible before, but I was able to understand it and read it right there at that moment. It became like a magnifying, the paper became a magnifying, like if it was sitting this close, you know, to my eyes. It was like the words just zoomed in right in the front of my eyes. And so the Spirit was telling me that she took me from the natural world and entered me into a spiritual realm. And she was going to teach me some things that the institutions of education wasn't going to be able to teach me. So no matter what degrees and scholarships and certificates that you might have learned from this present realm that we're living in, rooted in oppression and exploitation and demise and mistreatment. You know, the people who don't treat you right can't teach you right in their church nor their state institutions. So when you truly want to understand truth, then the divine spirit will open up your eyes and your ears in order to be receptive of that. But she's going to be the teacher of it. And your first conduit of being able to communicate with the divine spirit has to be the mind. So that's the reason why the first thing that has to change is your way of thinking, so it can change your way of doing. Because whatever in your mind is where your body will follow. So then I asked the divine spirit, well, what is this strange and new feeling that I'm experiencing? It seemed like I got like this big old smile on my face that I can't seem to remove. Well, she closed my eyes and she opened up the book and placed my finger on the answer. And this time it says, unless you humble yourself as this little child, you can in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. Well, she gave me immediate understanding what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing, and the way I'm expressing it is the way that is accepted unto the divine spirit. That I have to be like a little child, you know, because see, grown people, when they get to the age where they feel like they're grown and nobody can teach them nothing, that they seem to think that they have all the answers, that's when the divine spirit, for those who exalt themselves, shall be abased, and those who humble themselves shall be exalted. So if you notice in that teaching, it was JC was actually speaking to grown men when he told them, unless you humble yourself as this little child, you can in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. So, what is that telling you as a grown person? The way you must communicate with the divine spirit is through the humbleness of a child, the innocence, eager, and have the zeal, because there's a difference between emotion and zeal. Emotion, it can draw attention to you for a purpose, but the zeal is when you're in pursuit to take what it is that you learn and apply it and multiply it for a divine purpose. So the divine spirit allowed me to see also that she takes the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and she will be taking the weak things of the world to confound the mighty. The world as a whole, from a political and a religious standpoint, considers the women as weak. They also consider people with disabilities as weak. They also consider children, who have no guidance, or, to the aspect who are single family homes, as weak, or also not having a platform to be heard. But the devil, or what I would consider what evil of the way of the man's way of thinking, would be his downfall. Because even in your Bibles, the person who got the greatest wisdom of all was King Solomon, and he was a child. He didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for, the destroying judgment or whatever on his enemies. He just asked for wisdom in order to understand how to lead his people. And that is symbolic and an allegory within itself for us to know what truly it is, what we should be asking for in order to have a platform of unity in our homes and community, and having a nation that respects the rich as well as the poor. And in all actuality, there should not be a continuation of poor when you're always addressing the issues and you're actually letting a platform for the issues to be addressed. Then why aren't they not being resolved? Because it's a residual income for those who profess it but have no intentions on resolving it, because you would be taking money from their pockets. I mean, even 501c3 situation with church, if you notice, you don't have, real preachers who preach about the law, actually standing up in their communities and trying to be a voice on behalf of those who are voiceless, because of the deception of the 501c3 of the fine print. But those are another issues for another time that shall be revealed. But nevertheless, so the divine spirit allowed me to, because of my hard-headedness and all that I've experienced, has allowed me to sit on dialysis for 21 years. 21 years on dialysis, and was never actually placed on what they call the kidney transplant list. Now, in all actuality, I actually tried to get on the list for 4 times, but it wasn't the divine's time, simply because the Spirit allowed me to experience a situation that actually really turned me off from psychiatrists. Because when I wound up on dialysis, I realized that I wasn't able to up and go as I pleased like I did before. I can wake up in Cali on one day, and the next day or a week later I'm in Florida or the Virgin Islands, Las Vegas, Canada, Alaska. I mean, I've been all over the place, at a drop of a dime. I'm ready to go, and I can just go. But when it dawned on me that I was being chained to me, chained to a machine 3 times a week, every day for the rest of my life, that I had to be where I have to do dialysis in order to cleanse my blood and remove fluid, because after 5 years I wasn't even urinating anymore. So um, one day I got upset that I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and I needed somebody to talk to. So I actually called the hospital and told them that I was recently diagnosed with kidney failure, and I need somebody to talk to because I didn't have no family support. I didn't have no friends to support me. I was basically alone through this process. So they said, yeah, come on in and we'll evaluate you for, I think, 72 hours. But I didn't know what I was walking into. All I heard is, yeah, come on in and we'll evaluate you, and, we'll have somebody to talk to you. So I actually went to the hospital, and it was strange when they told me what floor to go to and what unit. And when I got there, I noticed it was an officer sitting at a desk outside the door that I must go through in order to be admitted. And I was like, wow, why they got you sitting out here guarding the door? And he looked at me like, don't you know? But I asked him again, I was like, why are you sitting here like you're guarding the door? He said, because I am the guard. I have to guard the door because people try to come in as well as they try to leave out. I was like, wow, so what they sending me to? So once I got in, they just took me to my room and put me down for the night. And then the next morning, I wake up because somebody's calling me and shaking me, and there's like four white coats standing over me, trying to talk to me, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, hold on, who are you? What, four of you, white coats? What's going on? Long story short, come to find out that they were psychiatrists, and they was asking all of these questions that to me was irrelevant. I'm here because I'm having a hard time dealing with having to be on dialysis 3 times a week, and my selfishness of not wanting to be tied down because I want to just get up and go whenever I choose to get up and go. These people were asking me questions about my personal life. Do I want to kill myself and all this stuff? So I didn't have the divine spirit in my life at this time. So I would respond in a way. To them, I appeared to be combative, or they told me I was being what is that word? I wasn't being cooperative, but nevertheless, it come to find out that they were more interested in my past, my upbringing in my life, than the matter at hand. So once I come to the conclusion that these people aren't here to help me do what I came here to seek for some help and some type of understanding, to get my thought tracks in the right way, I'm ready to go. But now they tell me, well, we make that decision when you can go. Okay, I'm not even the one to even say anything like that to. Like, what you mean? No, I make the decisions over my life, not you, and I'm ready to go. Excuse me. What did I do that for? The next thing I know, these people done put me into what they call those jackets what they call those things? Yeah, straight jacket. Thank you. They put me in a straight jacket, y'all, because I was ready to go and I didn't want to deal with these people anymore. And they put me in a room where all the walls were padded. And I'm like screaming, hollering, kicking, just having a fit. And then the next thing you know, they I can't remember if they gave me a shot or they gave me a pill. But when I woke up, I had a big nasty black rash all the way around my neck, and I had like blisters in my mouth and around my mouth. And to come to find out what they gave me I was obviously allergic to. And what was it called? I know it started with, oh my goodness, um, Thorazine. They gave me Thorazine, and by the grace of the divine spirit, I was allergic to it. But that stuff right there, mm-mm, mm-mm. No, they should not be giving somebody no crap like that. But nevertheless, so 72 hours, make a long story short, turned into 3 weeks. Then people held me up in there until I was completely almost stupid when I left out of there. And the man, well, the mind of a potential man that was in my life at the time, when I called him and told him to come and get me, well, like I said, I was abusive to old and young, two-footed and four-footed. So, I was abusive to him. So to him, it's like, yeah, stay there until they can treat you. So when you come home, you might be a little different than you are. So he was telling me, no, baby, stay there. They're trying to help you and this, that, and the other. So I was like, furious. This man that I loved, but obviously, we was not connecting. Well, that's a whole nother subject, love, because even a man abusing a woman and say, I love you, love has to be redefined. And it's no different from a woman being abusive to a man. That has to be redefined. And the divine spirit, one of the first things I ask of the spirit is like, I to show me what love is, because I've heard about love all my life, but then I can look to see the definition, and it can be very abusive. So not only physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the things that we are enduring in life under the banner of love is a lie, and it has to be redefined in order for us to be able to uproot the injustice and to overthrow the hypocrisy and to cast out the religious dogmas in order us to plant and rebuild a divine destiny and a purified legacy with sovereign virginity that was truly given to us freely from the very beginning. Okay, so I've come to the conclusion when I was being diagnosed to, I mean, not diagnosed, to be evaluated to get on the kidney transplant list. They would always say, well, you have to go see a psychiatrist in order, because it's part of the team. And when they start talking about psychiatrists, I'm like, nope, I'm not dealing with no psychiatrist. I've had that experience. That experience was not a good one for me. So no. So the 4 times that I attempted to get on the list, even my own way of believing and thinking, it wasn't, I wasn't going to do it that way. But coming up into now, 21 years, last year in 2018, I was going through the transplant evaluation because my nurses and social workers and the FA at DaVita. Shout out to my medical team at DaVita Dialysis. Wow, it hasn't really been that long. I was getting ready to say the address, but it's in Ponce City, right there on North Avenue, right there at that new Ponce City Market. It's a DaVita, and my favorite nurse is Naomi, and she was like that divine spirit that the mother would use for her to, counsel me at times to get my rowdiness or my behavior like in check sometimes. And then when I left from there, I had a very good nurse named Miriam. And then there's one named Jason who would, at the beginning, annoyed me, but in the end, he's became a very nice friend of compassion and funniness because it's actually needed. and then the social workers, Trina and Tisha, and shout out to all of you and the clients that are still there. I'm not gonna call you patients; you're clients, and um, I'm hoping that the divine blessings, when you make up your mind that it is your initiative that can give you the responsibility and the accountability of how your life is going to maintain. May the divine also bless you in the same way. But Tuesday, I had an appointment with the surgeons for the transplant, and I also eventually was going to have to deal with the um, meeting the psychiatrist. But my nurse, Naomi, she would encourage me, to go on and do it this time, and then not to mention the divine spirit was basically, she told me on a Tuesday morning, because see, I have a bad habit of talking in my sleep, and people tell me I talk in my sleep. But Tuesday morning, I woke up and I heard myself talking. But I was trying to pay attention to what it was that I was saying. And I remember the Spirit speaking through my mouth and says, I am about to give you one of your wings of the two powers. One of the two powers, I'm going to give you one of them. I am about to give you a child's kidney for your inner child of obedience for the past 16 years. So, of course, I had to sit up on that one because I was like, wait a minute, I have to, what did I just say? Did I hear myself right? So, I was like, did I hear what I had? And then the divine spirit just took over my lips and my tongue and basically say the same thing. She says, I am about to give you one of your wings of two powers. I am about to give you a child's kidney in order to match your inner child of obedience for the past 16 years. So needless I have to say, I actually started crying. I was very emotional at the time because I'm not even on the transplant list. And, I'm 56. I'm 56 years old, and you're talking about giving me a child's kidney, but, there's nothing impossible for the divine spirit. So I actually had, when I went to my appointment with Emory transplant team to meet the surgeons, I told them, shared with them the experience that I had on Tuesday morning. I told them the divine spirit spoke through my lips and told me that she was going to give me a child's kidney to match my inner child of obedience for the past 16 years. So when I finished telling them that, because I'm showing with excitement and, because my first name is Halia. My spiritual name, my office, and I did change my birth name, but when you come into the knowledge of the truth, then you apply the truth. So I didn't want to continuously take on or even hear of a cultural name that doesn't match my ancestors. So, but anyway, the divine spirit gave me my name. So, Halia, according to how it was given to me, means she, which is me, stand firm for the Most High, the utmost high's word is true. That means when the divine spirit tells me something, nobody's opinions, nobody's interpretations, nobody's translation, nobody's books of deception or perception can change what the divine spirit has spoken unto me. And that's exactly how the divine used me before I even knew of what that name meant. But anyway, so they looked at me and then they laughed. Oh, and one of them stepped forth and says, well, from a medical perspective, that is not going to happen. We do not give children kidneys to people your age. We give them to other children, or we give them to young adults who have a whole life ahead of them. And I just simply said, well, I hear what you're saying, but I know who is truly in control and what the divine spirit spoke unto me. So I left it at that and still kept a smile on my face because I know what the divine spirit told me. So now I just recently, I mean, not recently, so after that happened, I got a phone call and I was only on the list for 5 days. 5 days. And they called me in for a kidney. They told me a perfect match, though there's another individual who would also be considered for this kidney, but this would be a perfect match for you. So the next thing I know, I'm admitted, and then they tell me that the other one was disqualified, so the kidney's for me. Okay, so close to midnight, a lady walks in. She didn't even bother to turn on the light, and she tells me, unfortunately, something has happened, and we will not be giving you the kidney. So of course I was a little disappointed, and then the assistant come in and he sat on my bed. Now these um, white coats don't sit on your bed, but this one was like very intuitive. He sat on my bed and he says, "If I didn't see it for myself, I wouldn't believe it. Um, you are old enough to remember the video game called Pac-Man." And I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "Well, we had to do one more test, and under the microscope, your blood became as a Pac-Man and started immediately attacking the blood of the donor." And I'm like, "Well, how could that be? You all called me and told me it was a perfect match and everything was fine." He said, sometimes these things happen. Something got crossed or whatever, but it's a good thing that we didn't put it in you because your body would have rejected it, and we would have to go back in and take it out, and some things can be very detrimental. So I just simply said, "Oh, okay, well then obviously that wasn't the kidney that the divine spirit wanted me to have in the first place, because the divine spirit is the one who opens doors that no one can close and close them that no one can open."